introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver.
Hi there, Stephen Oliver with Advisor Wealth Mastery, and I'm joined by Jeff Smith, also with Advisor Wealth Mastery. And Jeff, you've been recovering from COVID a little bit. You're looking pretty healthy and spry at your young age here. But what we were going to talk about, and you and I have both been, God, I don't know, I was guessing in really business operations of various sorts and operations. You know, I'm now at 40 some years and you're at 50 some years, not to date us too badly here. But one of the things that we've always found is, especially with financial advisors, is they really underestimate, I guess, at the outset, what level of relationship they have with a new client. And oftentimes kind of take that for granted. And then don't communicate with and basically just touch them. And I mean, with note cards and different things appropriately enough. One of the books that you and I both loved years ago, remember Joe Gerard? And he was the Guinness Book of World Record holder as the #1 car salesman in the world. And Joe Gerard had several really interesting things he was talking about on accomplishing that. But one was the Joe Gerard Rule of 300. And we can talk about that in a second. But the other was everybody who ever came into his orbit, which certainly include anybody he had ever sold a card to, they got a card from Joe forever until the address went bad and he couldn't track them down every month. So 12 times a year they were getting a, happy St. Patrick's Day, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, happy Father's Day, happy Mother's Day, and anything else he could make up. And they always were, just thinking of you, your friend Joe Gerard, I like you, stuff like that. And I'm amazed. I'm working with, we are, as you know, several advisors who are in the $2, $3, $4 million revenue level. And an awful lot of their client base, it just sits there and they think they have a good relationship with them. But as you and I were talking before we started recording, they end up in this out of sight, out of mind situation, right? And, let's talk about that. I mean, let's talk about it from several standpoints. Number one, and I'll quote somebody else, is David Ogilvy, who was in part the inspiration for the TV show Mad Men. But he was the top Madison Avenue marketer in the 60s and 70s. And he called it, you're marketing to a moving parade of humanity, not a standing army. Now, the way I interpret that with an existing client is just because you were meeting all their needs when you met them first 18 months ago doesn't mean that their life situation hasn't changed dramatically. And I see advisors with this huge book of clients. Let's say they, maybe a commission-based product, they sold them a whole life policy, but all of a sudden the person has gone from maybe they were having some financial trauma and that was the best they could do, to they're doing well now. Or maybe they're a business owner and they're going to have a liquidity event and sell the business. And if you're not constantly touching them, constantly working with them, and I don't mean you have to meet with them face to face every month, but they should at least be getting the version of the Joe Gerard every month they're getting a card from you, and it can be, his list grew to like 25,000 people. It can be they're all getting, the same thing. And, Jeff, what we do with our clients is every week we do a Zoom meeting. And different meetings will have different subjects, but, they're going to come, some of them every week and some of them once a month, on the subject that they're interested in. And now you can do a one-to-many interaction that really reminds them that you exist, reminds them of what you do, and keeps you in front of them. Pick up on that. What are some considerations on that?
Well, what they don't realize is that if you're not keeping them constantly in front of you, or that you in front of them, then they don't think about you when something positive happens in their life. They just maybe they got a big tax refund, maybe their business was extra good this year, maybe there's a death in the family and they need help with that end, with investing, and what should I do and how can I avoid taxes? And there's so many issues that you could help them with, but if you're not constantly in front of them, they're not going to think of you first.
Yeah.
And there's so many avenues that you can help them with. It's not just the one that you might have sold them on, but there's so many other things that maybe they weren't ready for at the time. And you're sending them this info, happy 4th of July, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, anything that goes on every month. There's some holiday that you're just wishing them well, hope everything's going well. And, I like the personalized cards, where, and you can even get them handwritten notes now, where it looks like you wrote it if you have a large base, but it's some personal note. And then I would always put one little thing in there about maybe something they might be interested in. If I can help you with anything, or life has changed, let me know, we're here to help. And just that constant feedback with them is important, I think.
Well, and I probably have one laying here on my desk. I just saw a little meme online, and it was the Zoom meeting. And so it was the guy in his apartment. He's got the computer, and everything that you can see is nice and neat and organized, and everything else is stacked up behind him. I always feel like that's my office. But you can even do we do the automated thing where they have the auto pen deal, and even simple apps like Send Out Cards can do it, where we can send out 2,000 cards, and they all look handwritten, and they all can be personalized with their name and one thing or another, and it feels personal, even though it's not. It's kind of like 15 years ago, you could mail merge their name into the email, and they thought it was personal. Nowadays, that doesn't fool anybody. But one of the things that all advisors tend to focus on first is growing their business through introductions or referrals. And I want to pick up on something you just said, is an awful lot of when your name should come up is Mary's out to lunch at the tennis club with her friend Sue, or Bill's out to lunch with his boss, or whatever it might be. Maybe she's having a water cooler chat with her friend at work. But it's at times when it's off the cuff, it comes up in conversation, and no matter how much you think that you have a great relationship with your clients, I've got to tell you, at those water cooler conversations, is you're not top of mind unless you're really in front of them and interacting with them a lot, right? And that's what you're talking about is, so many introduction opportunities, referral opportunities come up randomly. And it's not like your client is wearing a sticker on their jacket. Hey, remember to refer them to Stephen. It just it comes up in conversation, and they don't think about it. That's why on the referral side, I like it to be, we have live events, right? We have maybe one event where Sue brings 10 friends, and we have another type of event where all of your clients are invited. Maybe a client appreciation event. Maybe it's a specific topic. Could even be in my conference room. Anybody who has this specific need, this topical, we're going to cover it. But things where they feel comfortable inviting their friends, right? And the second element is pass along tools. That's why we like most of our clients to develop a book or develop a series of reports. And by the way, I can have a 10-chapter book, and now I have 10 different reports, and each of those reports can be a reason for people to raise their hand or pass along, and then it can become a book, and it can become a 50-page book or a 150-page book. But that's what we're talking about is if I had a reason every month to mail you a new report on a topic, and even if I only had 5 or 6 of them and I just kept rotating them, it'd be fine, right? But now each of my clients have 5 or 6 of them to pass along to their friends. More likely that when a topic comes up, they're going to pass them along. I work with an advisor who actually, we were both working with Dan Kennedy at the time, and I still work with Dan a lot, as you know, but Dan had said, well, okay, if the book is working so well as a pass along to generate referrals, why aren't you doing a new one every quarter? And that's right. I mean, it's easy to get done. You can farm it out. There's all kinds of different ways, but there's a number of things where you need to keep in contact. Jeff, one of the things, in contrast with a number of other business we've worked with, is I think people who are wealth managers, who are managing assets, they get kind of fat, dumb, and lazy in a sense because their client retention year over year tends to be really good, right? Probably and by the way, I was in a high-level webinar meeting with Northwestern Mutual, and they had a couple shocking stats. In contrast, it was something like, and this is not the right percentage, but it was something like 60% of all clients who are working with an advisor aren't particularly happy with their guy. And 30% at any one time are thinking about changing to somebody else. Now, we know typically the client retention is high enough that it really doesn't happen very much. They may be a little disgruntled, but the pain of disconnect is high enough they tend to stay. But I'll tell you what, if one of your clients is in that mode, is the last thing they're doing is bringing in their 5 new friends every quarter to you to hand off, right? Is they're having conversations of, I got this guy, he's doing fine for what I need, for you what you need, I'm not sure he would be good or she would be good. Maybe we should live, some of your clients are having that conversation just because you haven't done enough to nurture the relationship. Is that a fair way to say it, Jeff?
I've been on the receiving end. I've been on the other side of the fence. I've been driving Mercedes for a long time. It's kind of like my car of choice. But what got me into that,
I keep trying to get you to be a Porsche guy.
I know. But I tell you, when I bought my first Mercedes years ago, I just happened to have one of the best salesmen that I ever came across. And this guy was doing exactly that. Every month he'd send me something, and then he would always put a note in there, don't forget me if one of your friends wants a Mercedes. Well, I must have sent him a dozen Mercedes because, you drive a car and people go, oh, wow. And they said, I've been thinking about getting one of these. I said, well, if you're going to do it, go talk to my guy.
Yeah.
And because he said, okay, you need your car service, give me a call. Don't just call and make the appointment. Just tell me when you want to come. I'll have a loaner for you. I mean, he had me so hooked up that I just felt like, it's like when you go into the restaurant and they know your name and they're going to show you to your table, and then they come over and take extra good care of you and use your name. See, that's the kind of, there's no better marketing tool than a referral because it's an easy sell. Because they already have somebody that they associate with as trusted. Well, whenever I refer somebody to him, unsolicited, he didn't say, I'm going to give you this, but he would always send me something in the mail. And sometimes there were even $100 gift or something. It's, a Dom Perignon or, pastries or cakes and, just things like that.
And it wasn't a bribe to get you to send friends.
Oh, no, I want to show my appreciation.
Yeah.
And the way he took care of me. Yeah. Because I tell you, I went to that same dealership for about 20 years. When he left, I quit going there.
Yeah.
Because it was back into the same old routine of the way they treat you. So it's that constant taking care of him, treating your clients right. And don't be afraid to ask for a referral.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask because, you spend so much time and energy and money doing the marketing to get a new client that you might as well make him make money for you too. And it's an easy close, easy sell. All you have to do is have a happy customer and then you're going to have a happy referral.
The Mercedes example reminds me of two stories. One is Joe Gerard, and his quote was, as long as we're using Joe, is I want to sell you a lemon so I can show you how well I can perform with the service department. And it's an interesting comment. But the other one is Hector. I've told you a story about Hector, right? Remember when I bought that new Jag? It was a 1999 XK8, and this is how good the guy was, because I still remember Hector. I was getting ready to join the Mercedes Club, and I was looking at a 560 SL, and I had told Jody to come look at this car that I was looking at, and I get a call from her. She says, no, come over here. I want you to meet Hector. And so he was at Stevenson Jaguar, right? And it was Jaguar Porsche. And so I go over, and instead of buying the Mercedes, I ended up buying his black on black XK8. To me, still one of the most beautiful cars ever made. You remember that one? The one that
I remember it because you got me hooked to buy my.
That's right. Your XKR. That's right. But Hector was exactly the same way. I would hear from him all the time, and he'd, every now and then when something he thought, I might like would come in, I'd get a call from him. And he ended up selling me, I think it was 3 Porsches, in addition to the Jaguar, right? And I had that 911 Carrera 4, and then he had a new 911 Turbo, black, like I like, black on black, come in. And so I was in for service on the C4, and he said, hey, how long are you going to be here? Why don't you go take that for a drive?
They love to do it. That was what he did on the loaners. He would always upsell me on one, and I'd be driving and go, man, these new ones are so much nicer.
Oh yeah, well that's where my story was going, because so I buy the Turbo, right? After he just kind of threw me the keys, and then I was going to have to pick it up on Monday, and he said, oh no, you don't need to take your old 911 here, and he gave me a Turbo Cayenne back when they had just come out. He said, here, take this for the weekend, right? Yeah. So he almost had a twofer. He almost had me on a Turbo Cayenne and a Turbo 911.
Yeah, the old puppy dog clothes.
Oh yeah. It was exactly right. It was just I needed a third row, and it didn't. It was just a little bit too small. But he damn near made 2 in 1, right? And but again, it's common for an advisor. You have your discovery meeting. You go through all the stuff. You figure out what they need, you get them set up on what they need, and then 6 months later, maybe 3 months, sometimes 6 months, even a year later is the next time you ever talk to them, right? Now, you've been out of sight, out of mind for at least 11 of those 12 months, right? But if you were dripping cards on them, I like Mrs. Fields cookies and Harry and David's, and so, I'm always sending them cookies and stuff. But if you send him,
he was right in your wheelhouse there.
Yeah. Or a money tree. That's the other thing. Those little bonsai trees that are called a money tree.
Yeah.
And so you're gifting them. But if you're doing live Zoom meetings that are interactive, and it can be in group, if you're doing webinars, if you're sending.
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books, and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
Reports regularly, and it doesn't have to be anything special. In fact, it might be, LPL or Northwestern Mutual or whatever has, materials. They all have a ton of stuff. It could be,
he even knew that I was a Redskin fan and a Nats fan. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a couple of tickets in the mail from him to go to the game. Now somebody probably dropped, how they drop tickets on you all the time at the businesses, and
sure.
Or the company has a bunch of tickets and he has extras and drops a couple my way. I mean, how do you not go out of your way to do something to help somebody like that?
You bet. Yeah. Now I have a nightmare story on that one. I think I've told you this one. Remember when I was spending, and I don't know how many millions I spent on TV advertising, right? And so I show up at my office one day, and there's, now get how far off of this is, a Denver Broncos golf bag. And I don't know, it must have been, I don't know anything about this crap, you know more than I do, but it must have been $1,000 leather, high end golf bag, right? So the sales rep has thought this is a great gift. She missed the point that, one, I'm beyond apathetic about football. Number two, the closest I've ever come to having an interest in playing golf is driving the call. You remember when we went golfing in St. Augustine
with Bill Clark and Joe.
I was driving the golf cart doing conference calls while you guys were hitting the ball. So she missed the mark on and spent a ton of money, right? It could have been, I'm going to buy you dinner at Morton's 3 times in a row, or it could have been, anything else. But it was so funny. It stayed in my office for like years because I used that as a story. You don't want to be the story about how far off the mark you were. But again, you're right. I mean, anytime we have a client who does something nice for us, I want to talk to her husband or talk to, the wife or something. And it's like, what is she like? Oh, she likes to go to this spa. Okay, great. So I'll give them a, $200 gift certificate to the spa. Or what's their favorite restaurant? Okay, we'll give them a certificate to, Morton's or their favorite Italian place or whatever. But, half the value of the gift is that you went out of your way to figure out what they like.
Yeah.
Rather than just do something generic, right?
And you got to know your clients.
Yeah. And it's the gifting. There's a great book, by the way. I'm sure you've read it too, called Giftology, but it's all about using gifting effectively. We've recommended that to all of our clients, but it's amazing how much impact that has. But you know what most people do is they think, oh yeah, I stay in touch with my client. I send them all an email once a month. Well, one is, as we both know, email's dying a slow and painful death. Number two is
opening that card that looks personally addressed to you. Don't have it with a sticker and a stamp and everything with just the company logo and the company stamp of the address, but it's all handwritten. Even the envelope is hand addressed.
Yeah.
At least,
exactly.
It looks like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is so much better, right? Is what, and by the way, you can do, we do 2,000 at once of stuff like that, but people perceive it to be personal and individualized and is maintaining that touch, even if it was a postcard, right? But something that looks personal is much, much better. And what you want to make sure you do, sorry, I'm multitasking here for a second, but what you want to make sure you do is that you're constantly in front of your clients. I think the other thing that we misinterpret about a lot of this stuff is people's life changes, right? We mentioned that moving parade of humanity idea, but oftentimes, I mean, you could have a client where, like, the most you could do with them was this life policy, and and they're doing $300 a month, and it's easy to write them off. Like, we had a client recently, and frankly, coming into your pipeline, you would think this is somebody I barely want to work with, but turns out the parents passed away, and they had inherited a pretty valuable house, but a pretty valuable investment account too. And these are people who would have no idea what to do with this. You know who I'm talking about. And good thing is we were in front of them at the right time, right place, right? It's like my joke is I have a advisor where is two people actually. One that's their primary business is helping an entrepreneur build his business up from 3 or 4 million a year to 10 million, and then selling it, right? So he walks them through all the steps of acquisition and so forth to build a big enough business critical mass to sell it for, 10, 15, 20 million. But another one that works right behind that to business owners who have just sold their business to keep them from buying the Lamborghini, going to Tahiti, and getting divorced and getting the new trophy wife, right?
Know how to make the money work for them.
Yeah,
Rather than you work for the money, let the money work for you.
Yeah, and so his whole niche is people who just had a liquidity event selling a business and basically getting them to hold on to it for a year. Because as you know, I mean, most small business owners, they've eked out a living, but they've never had 5 million at one shot, right? So it's easy to go buy the Lamborghini or the Ferrari and, go find the hot new wife and get divorced and everything else. So his whole niche is finding these guys pre-sale, which is easier than you might think, and then facilitating to make sure none of it goes out the door for the first year, and then helping them be judicious after that with what is it you really need, what do you need to live on this stuff. Because what happens, by the way, is business owners who have a liquidity event and sell their business, number one, they think they're going to, sip Mai Tais on the beach, and that lasts maybe 30 days. But within 6 months, they're bored and they're ready to do something else because just it isn't in their personality. And number two, if they're not careful, the money's gone pretty quickly, right? Because they've gone from being judicious to being a spendthrift in all kinds of different ways. So he knows how to hold their hand through that and then help them have the resources to fund a new business if that's what they choose to do.
And they have to think outside the box. The way to, increase your business is, we're talking about building all this rapport. And what a lot of people forget is that your client has parents, your clients might even have grandparents, so they have kids, and maybe you're old enough that you are the grandparent, because now they're retiring and they're investing. So there's just so many tiers of, we're talking about referrals for friends, but there's so much family. And, a lot of families, larger families, 3 or 4 kids, and now those kids are grown up and now they're into their businesses and they need advice. Maybe it's a new parent who now wants to start some kind of, college fund for the kid, or the grandparents want to start one for the kids, for their grandkids. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can get them engaged in more things. Now, that doesn't happen if you haven't been in constant contact with them, if you haven't been developing that rapport and that relationship. And sometimes you have to remind them about this thing. Hey, if you're thinking about, getting a college fund set up for your kids, or if your grandparents or your parents want to, if they're selling their house or they're retiring or whatever, you kind of give them the ideas on who to refer you to.
Yeah. Well, and as you well know, but I'm working with an advisor where their biggest issue is, most of their clients are old enough that pretty quickly the wealth is going to transfer to the kids. And an awful lot of parents, their concern is, especially if they have a decent portfolio, is the kids are going to be stupid with it, right? And if you don't think about that early, not only to get an introduction or a referral, from the kids and the grandkids, but to make that transition smooth. And as you've seen, unfortunately, we've had a number of friends. We've seemed like we keep going to Dallas for funerals, but the transition tends to be ugly unless it's pre-organized, right? So,
and if they have a lot of assets, you don't want Uncle Sam taking half of it. So it's got to be planned out ahead. That it's not something you can do at the last moment. So you got to plant these seeds in their mind, before the fact on some of these things that you can do. There's always things you can do even after the fact, but the earlier they can plan for it, and the earlier you can get them thinking like that, then the more tiers we're talking about of expanding. I call it increasing your client value.
Oh yeah.
now that client got you another client, and then maybe it was his father or his grandfather or his kids or a neighbor or a business association or somebody from the country club, something along those lines, where now that person has expanded, and now you think about how much that person has brought you business and how much he's had such an influence and impact on your life that unless you make an impact on his life and really make him feel like you're part of his life, I mean, nothing goes farther to develop that relationship than always thinking of this person in a positive way and sending them some recognition or some little thing to let them know you're thinking about them.
Yeah, and to come full circle before we go too far afield, the main thing to think about and never underestimate is how often you need to be communicating with in front of your clients to have an impact, right? I think I mentioned earlier, working for years with Dan Kennedy. Well, Dan Kennedy, I got the Dan Kennedy clock on the wall. He did clocks with one of his books. The little bobblehead, he's writing on he's writing on this longhorn bull, and he's it's a bobblehead of him. Mouse pads, of course, a jillion books, reports, newsletters, all this stuff. But that's what you want to be. It's like, I see a lot of fans of like Disney, and they have Disney stuff everywhere. You can't look anywhere in the house. My both kids were, Chase still is, but they were both really into
like 3D mail. They give you so many ideas. I mean,
yeah.
There's so many ideas out there that you could do, but just do something.
Yeah.
Don't even send the card. Don't even send that hand addressed card every time. It's gotta look different and not look so they'll forget about it. Make it something unique.
Yeah, if you send that every month, it's not special anymore.
Yeah, and you think about all those different things you got from Dan Kennedy, but they're all so different that it makes. And now it's something that you're going to put on your desk or put on your wall or something that's going to make you think of him all the time.
Yeah, and by the way, email doesn't replace that, right? Now, so I was designing for an advisor, I guess just last week. But one of the things we did, he's captive, is we pulled all of the email the organization has. And, all the pre-done, pre-approved. And, they have what I wouldn't consider to be a ton of stuff. But what we figured out is they had like a newsletter that goes out once a quarter. Well, that's really anemic. But they have another newsletter that goes out every Monday. And they have another newsletter that goes out twice a month. And by the time we aggregated all of that, I could go and subscribe every one of his clients to all of them, and they were getting like 3 emails a week. And Jeff, you'll find this funny. He was like, well, isn't that too many times? Shouldn't we just be like sending them once a month? I was going, wait a minute. Number one, an awful lot of this stuff gets spam blocked. AOL throws it away. Yahoo throws it away. Hotmail throws it away. Google puts some of it in the promotional folder, puts some of it in the spam folder. So now the question is, how many of your clients even got half of the stuff, right? Number two is, the way you have it not look like spam is they're getting something in their email in their box all the time. Even once or twice a day. You remember that article we were sharing with our clients? Wall Street Journal did an article on email marketing with big retailers. Nordstrom's, Macy's, people, Neiman Marcus, people who are big enough to have smart people working for them. And you can even see this with Groupon and places like that. They were finding that their average frequency for a customer was between 380 and 780 times a year, right? So basically somewhere between once and 2 or 3 times a day. And so that's what you have to do with email for them to even recognize that you're sending out stuff, right? Now, it's easier than it sounds, because oftentimes what we'll do is we'll design, a 6-week, cycle of stuff and then just have it start over. Most of them, they aren't reading it anyway, so it just keeps dripping on them. Or we take all the stuff that LPL or Northwestern Mutual or whatever produces and just kind of aggregate it all on things that might be halfway relevant. Or use software like Snappy Kraken is one that has a bunch of preset stuff. But email is useful, necessary, and far from adequate. On the other hand, if I added to that, we do a live Zoom meeting once a month as a group that's Q&A. And we did a webinar on specific topics. Anytime there's a new thing, whatever the new legislation is or something, maybe we do a webinar on how that's going to affect your retirement. And then we make sure that some physical note card, just, because, goes out every month. And then we make sure that maybe we have a practice newsletter and it's going out every month. And by the way, Jeff, as you well know, the mistake people make is they make it look corporate rather than personal. And I don't care whether you're one of 9,000 advisors in a big company or whether you're a solo RIA. It should come from a human. It shouldn't come from a corporate.
And address personally, not just go right into the topic, but hey, John, or whatever their name is, to let them know to them. It's not something that's going out to everybody across the board.
Yeah. And now we're suffering.
Even though they probably think that.
Now we're suffering death by Zoom as your connection, Fritz. Probably as everybody in the neighborhood just cranked up Netflix, and your cable modem just got tapped or something like that. But anyway, not to belabor the point, but when you're an advisor, it's very important, no matter how big your client list is, and no matter how much of a relationship you think you have with them, that essentially daily you're in front of them with nurturing processes. And if you want referrals or introductions, if you want to be there to expand the opportunities that they may have to work with you, et cetera, you've got to be constantly educating your clients. You've got to be constantly showing concern and appreciation for your clients, and you've got to be constantly in their worldview, right? You've got to not end up in out of sight, out of mind. And even if you're meeting with somebody for a review once a quarter, I got to tell you, a month later, they're not thinking about you at all when the conversation comes up over the water cooler or comes up over lunch. If they're out on the golf course or they're playing racquetball or whatever, they may think later I should have mentioned, my guy. But, however, if this month you send them 5 copies of the special report on blank topic, and next month and every month you have some live event that they're welcome to invite their friends to, and you have a bunch of educational videos that you make available to your clients and you're putting perhaps on YouTube and so forth, and if you're sending personal notes every month, and if every time they take an action that's positive you're gifting them, then you're going to be top of mind. And it can be kitschy stuff like I mentioned, Dan's bobblehead on the bull or the wall clock, or it can be more substantive. That gifting book talks about sending like real high-end steak knives as a gift and other things like that. I always think the thing to do when you're gifting, though, is just not to do the send me a golf bag of the Denver Broncos, right? Don't
be careful that you're not. That's why you have to know your clients better.
Yeah.
You have to develop a personal relationship with them in that them a little bit. If they're into sports, are they into football or baseball or basketball or soccer or whatever, golf or whatever their sport is, because there is so many that do at least some of those.
Well, one of our clients recently, sweetest person in the world, knows that we're both into motorcycles, right? And I jokingly say, we both went to Sturgis, and I resigned from the cult of Harley Davidson to join the cult of BMW.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you sold your Harley. You traded your Harley in there.
Yeah, in the hub of Harley fanatics, right? Which was probably 2/3 of the reason is, what everybody else is doing, I want to do the opposite. But nicest lady in the world sent me this must have been $100 Harley Davidson shirt for Christmas a year or so ago. And I'm like, well, okay, it's sort of on the mark because it's motorcycles, but it's off the mark because, like, you know, and you well know, you know, there's the cult of being a motorcycle guy, right? But then there's the cult of and BMW, you know, not so much you've got a Goldwing too. You know, you're in the cult of Harley, you know, also got a Goldwing, but there's not so much the cult of Goldwing. But Harley, I mean, it's the, you know, they show you their Harley Davidson tattoo, right?
Yeah.
You know, and they do a great job nurturing it. And BMW is all the guys who, they have the dual sport and they ride from Colorado to Alaska to Central America and back.
When you hear BMW, you don't, the first thing you don't think of motorcycles, you think of cars anyway.
Yeah.
You know, Harley is strictly Harley, you know.
Yeah. No. It's Motorrad, and they're the, you know, my all my Neil Peart books. They're the guys. You know what BMW guys think of the Harley guys is they're the ones that are they think wild hogs. They're the orthodontist that rides down to the bar on the weekends and dresses up cool. And the BMW guys are the ones that do cross country treks. And you see that
actually some really serious, but and I'm surprised all the ladies didn't get into that link, you know, because BMW has been quite successful with that motorcycle line.
Oh yeah. And you frisked out a little bit there, but you know, we'll just leave it with. I mean, we've been rambling on, and we're going off direction. Sit down and really think. Even if you recognize your client retention is really good. You know, we have clients who their average client is with them 20 years. Well, great. But think about if, one, their life changes on something between your reviews, are you the first person they think about? Number two is if they're having the water cooler conversation or the lunch with a friend and a topic that you can solve comes up, are you top of mind or are you bottom of line? They'd have to go think about who they should recommend, and then it's too late, right? And what I think about it is that, you know, by email, you should probably be in front of your clients every day. And by some meeting, event, whether it's at your office, some group meeting, that should be something that's going on every month. And from a standpoint of them getting something in the mail from you, I'd like it to be a couple times a month, right? And it could be that fake handwritten card or the Happy St. Patrick's Day card, or it could be a package with a newsletter, information. It could be you put together a special report for them, and there's 5 of them, you know, with a cover note of, hey, pass these along to your friends, and I thought you would find it valuable, or it's 5 copies of your new book to pass along to their friends. But you should be dripping with them constantly, especially with stuff that's likely to sit around on their desk, likely to sit around in their office. I have Jeff, you know Don, and he did a real smart strategy of creating a series of books that were all designed for the C-suite CEO type of guys. But then the mistake was he sent them out a link to download it as a Kindle or as a PDF. And I said, no. He goes, oh, all these companies, they're all into digital. No. That's fine. Send them the link. But
and when you write the book and you personalize it to them, and now it goes on their bookshelf, they read it, they think of you. I mean, you know, you were talking about the one, a client who had, clients for 20 years, you know, they had been working with. Well, if you just get, you know, getting a referral is not that hard, but if you, let's say you were doing the worst job on it, you got one client referral a year. Yeah. And if I got just one a year, then I know from every one of my clients, if I get one a year, I've doubled my client base every year.
Yeah.
It's just getting one. But
most
you don't ask, you don't receive.
Most advisors are nowhere near that. And, you know, the last point to make that we well know is, let's say you have 100 clients or 300 clients. Really what you're going to do is you're going to get 5% of them that refer a lot of people, and 90% plus that introduce you to nobody, right? And that's one of the things we talk about with gifting is the hardest thing in the world is to get that client to send you the first person. And that's where you want to show appreciation. Like you said, the bottle of Don Perignon, as long as they're not a teetotaler, the gift certificate to the spa, the gift certificate to their favorite restaurant.
Yeah.
But-
With that Dom Perignon, he sent my wife a dozen roses.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife was making sure that I was going to that place from then on.
Oh yeah. Well, that's my strategy. Is flowers and cookies to the wife.
You
And
can't
course,
forget the significant other if
Yeah.
they have one.
yeah, exactly. But on that note, let me just suggest that you really sit down and think about how can I be really getting a touch out to my client essentially every day. How can I always be front of mind awareness and always be a warm, fuzzy feeling about me, right? And then as I get clients who, refer me to a good client, let's make sure we gift them and appreciate and recognize, because the one that send you one good client, they have 5 or 10 more. That's where I never got around to talking about that, but that was Joe Gerard's 300. Joe Gerard's 300 was how many people would be on the invite list to your funeral or your wedding, right? And that's the circle of influence that most people have that they can really work with if you really have gotten to the point that they love you, they're impressed, and you're top of mind all the time. On that note, we'll call it a day. And we might remind everybody we're happy to do a little personal evaluation, no charge. We have a bunch of free gifts at Advisor Wealth Mastery that you can take advantage of, including a couple of my books and a bunch of stuff that you've contributed as well, Jeff. And so I remind you of that. And this has been great. Jeff, anything to add before we call it a day?
No, just, start treating them like family, because your client base should feel like family to you.
That's exactly right. On that note, we'll call it a day.
Have a good day.